Have you ever wondered what it would be like to wake up in the most dangerous artistic paradise in history? Well, imagine opening your eyes not to your familiar bedroom, but to the smoke-filled air of 1920s Paris, where creativity and destruction dance together in a deadly waltz that would change art forever. Tonight, we're stepping into the silk stockings and beaded dress of a young Bohemian woman navigating the glittering nightmare of Montmartre's heroin-soaked cafes. This isn't just some romantic fantasy about the City of Light. This is the raw, unfiltered reality of what it meant to be a woman caught in the crossfire between artistic genius and chemical oblivion during one of history's most creatively fertile, yet personally destructive periods. By the end of this journey, you'll understand exactly why surviving as a Bohemian woman in 1920s Paris required more than just artistic talent. It demanded street smarts, political awareness, and an iron will that most people simply didn't possess. But before we dive into the absinthe-stained reality of your new existence, let me paint you the world you've just awakened into. Picture this. It's 1924, and Paris is experiencing what historians call the most explosive cultural renaissance since the Italian Renaissance itself. The Great War ended just 6 years ago, leaving an entire generation of young people desperate to forget the horrors they witnessed and embrace every moment of life with reckless abandon. The streets of Montmartre pulse with an energy that's both intoxicating and terrifying. American expatriates flush with dollar bills, mix with Russian aristocrats, fleeing the Bolshevik Revolution. German intellectuals debate philosophy with British poets, while Spanish artists sketch frantically in corners of smoky cafes. Everyone seems to be running from something, searching for something, or creating something that might make sense of a world that has revealed its fundamental chaos. You've awakened in a small garret apartment above Café de la Paix, one of dozens of establishments where art, politics, and narcotics blend into an intoxicating cocktail that promises transcendence but often delivers destruction. The morning light filtering through your grimy window reveals paintings stacked against walls, empty wine bottles scattered across the floor, and the lingering scent of opium and cigarettes that never quite leaves these bohemian quarters. Your reflection in the cracked mirror shows a young woman in her early 20s, dressed in the flowing fabrics and bold jewelry that mark you as part of the artistic underground. But don't let the romantic image fool you. Being a woman in this world means navigating dangers that your male counterparts never face, while fighting for recognition in artistic circles that view female creativity with suspicion and condescension. The clothes you're wearing tell a story of rebellion against everything your parents' generation held sacred. Your hair is bobbed short in defiance of traditional feminine ideals. Your dress barely reaches your knees, scandalizing conservative society, but marking you as someone who refuses to be confined by conventional expectations. The kohl around your eyes and the red paint on your lips announce to the world that you're not just a spectator in this cultural revolution. You're an active participant, willing to pay whatever price artistic authenticity demands. But here's what the romantic histories don't tell you about being a bohemian woman in 1920s Paris. Your artistic ambitions exist in constant tension with the reality that women, no matter how talented, are still viewed primarily through the lens of their relationships with men. The same society that celebrates artistic rebellion still expects women to find their ultimate fulfillment through marriage and motherhood. You're walking a tightrope between creative independence and social acceptability that could snap at any moment. The financial reality of your situation is even more precarious than your social standing. While wealthy American and British expatriates can afford to play at bohemian poverty, you're experiencing the real thing. Your income depends on selling paintings to tourists, modeling for other artists, or finding patrons willing to support your work in exchange for companionship that may or may not remain purely artistic. Every decision about where to live, what to eat, and how to spend your time is filtered through the constant pressure of economic survival. The heroin that's flooding into Paris through networks of dealers who understand exactly how to exploit artistic communities isn't just another recreational drug. It's becoming the currency of creativity itself, the secret ingredient that separates authentic artists from mere pretenders. The peer pressure to experiment with mind-altering substances isn't just social, it's professional. Artists who refuse to explore altered consciousness are viewed as conservative, unimaginative, and ultimately irrelevant to the cutting-edge movements reshaping European culture. Your typical day begins around noon because the artistic community operates on schedules that would horrify conventional society. Mornings are for recovering from the previous night's adventures in consciousness, exploration, and creative collaboration. You might wake up in your own bed, or you might find yourself on a couch in someone else's studio, surrounded by paintings you don't remember seeing before and people whose names you can't quite recall. The first challenge of each day is assessing your physical and mental state. After whatever combination of absinthe, opium, and experimental drugs helped fuel the previous evening's artistic endeavors. Your body has become accustomed to functioning on substances that would incapacitate someone from the conventional world. But you're constantly walking the line between enhancement and incapacitation. Too little chemical assistance in your work lacks the visionary quality that collectors expect. Too much, and you can't function well enough to create anything at all. Your breakfast, when you can afford it, happens at one of the cafes that serve as unofficial headquarters for different artistic factions and political movements. These establishments aren't just places to eat and drink. They're centers of intelligence gathering where you learn which galleries are showing new work, which patrons are looking for artists to support, and which creative collaborations might offer opportunities for advancement or disaster. The conversations flowing around you reveal the complex web of relationships that determine success or failure in the Bohemian world. That seemingly innocent discussion about color theory between two painters is actually a negotiation about who gets access to a wealthy American collector. The passionate debate about literary techniques happening at the next table masks a bitter rivalry between two writers competing for the same publishing opportunity. The philosophical arguments about the nature of consciousness are often covers for more practical discussions about drug sources, prices, and quality. Your own artistic work reflects the strange combination of inspiration and desperation that characterizes Bohemian life. When the drugs and circumstances align perfectly, you create paintings that capture emotions and experiences that conventional art cannot express. These pieces possess an intensity and authenticity that makes viewers feel like they're glimpsing something profound about human nature and the creative process. But for every transcendent work you produce, there are dozens of failed experiments, incomplete projects, and pieces that seem brilliant under the influence, but reveal themselves as incoherent messes in the harsh light of sobriety. The business side of being an artist in this environment requires skills that art schools never teach. You need to understand the complex psychology of potential buyers, most of whom are seeking experiences and social connections, rather than simply acquiring beautiful objects. Selling a painting often means selling access to the Bohemian lifestyle, providing wealthy clients with stories they can tell about their encounters with authentic artistic genius and cultural rebellion. Your studio, if you're fortunate enough to have one, serves multiple functions that would shock conventional society. It's your workspace, your living space, your social center, and often your pharmacy. The same room where you create your most personal artistic expressions also hosts gatherings where drugs are shared, political conspiracies are discussed, and sexual relationships are negotiated with a casualness that would scandalize the bourgeois world you've rejected. The constant presence of mind-altering substances creates an atmosphere where the boundaries between creativity, sexuality, and commerce become increasingly blurred. Relationships that begin as artistic collaborations evolve into romantic entanglements that transform into financial arrangements that circle back to creative partnerships. The same person might be your lover, your drug supplier, your artistic mentor, and your economic lifeline, creating dependencies that are simultaneously liberating and imprisoning. Your evening routine revolves around the café society that gives Montmartre its reputation as the center of European Bohemian culture. These aren't casual social gatherings, but carefully orchestrated performances where every participant is simultaneously audience and actor. Your choice of clothes, your selection of companions, and your participation in conversations are all strategic decisions that can advance or destroy your reputation within the artistic community. The drugs that flow through these evening gatherings aren't just recreational indulgences, but tools for artistic exploration and social bonding. Sharing opium or experimenting with new chemical combinations creates intimacies and shared experiences that bind people together in ways that conventional friendships cannot match. But these chemical bonds are also fragile and unpredictable, capable of transforming trusted friends into dangerous enemies when circumstances change or supplies become scarce. Your survival in this world depends on developing an almost supernatural ability to read people, situations, and social dynamics with accuracy that can mean the difference between opportunity and catastrophe. The same charming intellectual who offers to introduce you to influential collectors might be planning to exploit your work for his own benefit. The generous patron who provides financial support might expect forms of gratitude that compromise your artistic independence. The fellow artist who shares drugs and intimate conversations might be gathering information to use against you in future competitive situations. But despite all these dangers and complexities, there's something about this life that makes conventional existence seem colorless and meaningless by comparison. The intensity of experience, the constant possibility of breakthrough discoveries, and the sense of participating in historical transformation create an addiction that's more powerful than any chemical substance. You're not just living your life, but actively creating culture that will influence generations of future artists and thinkers. The question that haunts your quieter moments is whether this lifestyle is sustainable, or if you're slowly consuming yourself in service of artistic authenticity that might ultimately prove to be an elaborate form of self-destruction. Every morning brings evidence of friends who have crossed the line from creative exploration into complete dissolution, their talents consumed by the same forces that once fueled their greatest achievements. The reality you're now living reveals itself most starkly during those pre-dawn hours when the chemical fog lifts and you're left alone with the consequences of your choices. Your hands, once steady enough to capture the finest details in your paintings, now shake with a tremor that betrays your body's growing dependence on substances that were supposed to free your creativity, not enslave it. The mirror reflects back hollow cheeks and dark circles that no amount of kohl can disguise. Physical evidence of a lifestyle that burns through human vitality like a candle flame consuming wax. Your artistic output has become a barometer of your descent into this world of beautiful destruction. The paintings you created during your first months in Paris possessed a raw energy that gallery owners couldn't ignore. Critics used words like revolutionary and transcendent to describe work that seemed to channel experiences beyond ordinary human consciousness. But as your chemical experimentation has deepened, your art has become increasingly erratic, oscillating between moments of genuine brilliance and periods of complete creative paralysis that leave you staring at blank canvases for hours without producing a single meaningful brushstroke. The economics of your situation have grown more desperate with each passing month. The wealthy patrons who once competed to support promising young artists have begun to recognize the signs of advanced addiction, and their enthusiasm for your work has cooled accordingly. They're seeking the excitement of supporting authentic Bohemian culture, not the uncomfortable responsibility of enabling someone's systematic self-destruction. Your paintings now sell for a fraction of their former prices. And even those reduced sales happen less frequently as word spreads through collector networks about your increasing unreliability. Your living arrangements reflect this downward spiral in ways that would have been unimaginable when you first arrived in Paris with dreams of artistic glory. The charming garret apartment has been replaced by a series of increasingly squalid accommodations shared with other artists whose careers have followed similar trajectories. Your current room in a crumbling building near the cemetery is barely large enough for a mattress and easel, with walls so thin that you can hear every conversation, argument, and creative breakdown happening in neighboring spaces. The social dynamics of Bohemian Paris reveal their darker aspects as your circumstances deteriorate. Friends who once celebrated your artistic vision now avoid you, not out of cruelty, but out of self-preservation instincts that recognize how addiction can spread through social networks like a contagious disease. The cafes that once welcomed your presence now view you with suspicion, aware that desperate artists can become unpredictable liabilities who might create scenes that drive away paying customers. Your romantic relationships have become increasingly transactional, reflecting the brutal reality that love and artistic collaboration cannot survive the constant pressure of financial desperation and chemical dependency. The passionate affairs that once seemed to embody the bohemian ideal of free love have been replaced by calculated arrangements where affection is exchanged for drugs, shelter, or access to potential buyers for your increasingly unmarketable artwork. The daily routine that once felt like an adventure in conscious living has become a grinding cycle of maintenance activities designed to stave off withdrawal symptoms while preserving enough functionality to continue creating work. You've learned to time your chemical intake with precision, using just enough heroin to prevent the shaking and nausea that would make painting impossible, but not so much that you lose the manual dexterity required for detailed artistic work. Your interactions with the drug dealers who supply the bohemian community have revealed the sophisticated business networks that profit from artistic ambition and creative desperation. These aren't the crude criminals that conventional society imagines, but cultured individuals who understand art, philosophy, and human psychology well enough to position themselves as essential partners in the creative process, rather than mere suppliers of illegal substances. The most successful dealers have cultivated reputations as patrons of the arts, hosting salons where they display work by their artist clients while facilitating the chemical experiences that fuel continued creativity. They've learned to manage their customers' addictions carefully, providing just enough support to maintain productivity while ensuring continued dependence on their services. Your relationship with these figures has evolved from commercial transaction to something resembling artistic partnership, with your dealer taking a proprietary interest in your work and career trajectory. The political dimensions of bohemian life have become more apparent as your desperation has increased your willingness to participate in activities that once seemed too dangerous or morally compromising. The same cafes that host artistic discussions also serve as meeting places for anarchists, communists, and other radical groups whose revolutionary rhetoric provides intellectual justification for the lifestyle choices that are systematically destroying your health and career prospects. Your participation in these political movements isn't driven by genuine ideological conviction, but by practical considerations related to survival in an increasingly hostile environment. Revolutionary organizations provide community, purpose, and sometimes financial support for artists whose conventional career prospects have been eliminated by addiction and social marginalization. The same qualities that make you unsuitable for bourgeois employment, your rejection of conventional morality, and your willingness to embrace extreme experiences make you valuable to groups seeking to overthrow established social order. The intelligence networks that operate within bohemian circles have begun to take notice of your activities, creating new layers of danger that extend far beyond the personal risks associated with drug addiction. Your participation in radical political discussions combined with your access to information about wealthy patrons and foreign expatriates, has made you a person of interest to police officials who are increasingly concerned about the intersection of artistic culture and political subversion. Your artistic vision has become simultaneously more profound and more unstable as the chemical alterations to your consciousness have intensified. The paintings you create during periods of deep intoxication possess qualities that sober observers find impossible to dismiss as mere drug-induced hallucinations. These works seem to access levels of emotional truth and visual innovation that conventional artistic training cannot achieve, suggesting that your chemical experimentation has unlocked genuine insights into human consciousness and creative expression. But these moments of transcendent artistic achievement come at increasingly terrible costs to your physical and mental stability. The periods between successful creative sessions have become longer and more torturous, filled with anxiety, depression, and creative paralysis that make you question whether your artistic gifts are worth the price you're paying to access them. You've begun to suspect that the substances that once enhanced your creativity are now preventing you from achieving the artistic heights you reached before chemical dependency took control of your life. The question of whether you can survive this lifestyle long enough to fulfill your artistic potential has become the central tension defining your existence. Every day brings evidence of talented individuals whose stories serve as cautionary tales about the ultimate consequences of pursuing artistic authenticity through chemical enhancement. Some have died from overdoses, others have been committed to asylums, and a few have simply disappeared from the artistic community entirely. Their fates unknown, but probably tragic. Your awareness of these cautionary examples hasn't provided you with the motivation necessary to change course, because the alternative, returning to conventional society and abandoning your artistic ambitions, seems like a form of death that's even more terrifying than the physical risks associated with continued drug use. The Bohemian lifestyle has become your entire identity, and losing it would mean losing everything that makes you feel like a significant human being, rather than just another anonymous individual struggling to survive in an indifferent world. The dawn is breaking over Montmartre once again, and you're faced with the same impossible choices that have defined every day since you awakened into this world of beautiful destruction. The heroin that promised to unlock your creative potential has become the prison that may ultimately consume everything you hoped to achieve. But somewhere in the chemical haze and artistic desperation, there's still a spark of the vision that brought you to Paris in the first place, waiting to discover whether genius and self-destruction are truly inseparable, or if there might still be a path toward creative fulfillment that doesn't require sacrificing your humanity in the process. The weight of this realization settles over you, like the heavy velvet curtains that separate your world from the daylight reality beyond these walls. You've become a case study in the very phenomenon you once observed with detached fascination, watching other artists spiral into dependency while believing your own superior intelligence and artistic vision would protect you from similar fate. The irony tastes bitter as yesterday's absinthe, mixed with the metallic flavor of blood from lips you've bitten too hard during withdrawal tremors. Your morning ritual has evolved into a complex choreography of damage control and preparation for another day of walking the razor's edge between functional creativity and complete collapse. The face staring back from your cracked mirror belongs to someone you're not sure you recognize anymore. The bold confidence that once defined your features has been replaced by a haunted quality that speaks of experiences no amount of artistic training could have prepared you for. The letters from home, when they arrive, serve as painful reminders of the life you abandoned in pursuit of artistic authenticity. Your family's concerned inquiries about your health and happiness reveal how completely you've severed connections with anyone who might provide alternatives to this increasingly destructive path. Their offers of financial support and pleas for you to return home represent safety nets you've burned in service of maintaining credibility within artistic circles that now view you with mixture of pity and professional concern. Your fellow artists have begun to treat you with the careful distance reserved for someone whose trajectory serves as uncomfortable reminder of their own potential fate. The conversations that once flowed freely about technique, inspiration, and artistic philosophy now carry undercurrents of judgment and self-preservation. Nobody wants to be associated too closely with someone whose decline might reflect poorly on their own artistic integrity or professional prospects. The gallery owners who once competed for your work have developed sophisticated systems for identifying artists whose addiction has progressed beyond the point where their investment might yield profitable returns. They've learned to recognize the telltale signs, the slight tremor in handwriting when signing contracts, the increasingly erratic quality of work that swings between brilliance and incomprehensible chaos, the growing desperation that makes artists willing to accept any terms rather than face the possibility of no sale at all. Your creative process has become hostage to chemical availability and timing in ways that would have horrified your former self. The spontaneous inspiration that once struck at any hour now requires careful orchestration of substances, setting, and mental preparation that transforms art making from natural expression into elaborate ritual. You've learned to recognize the narrow window of optimal intoxication, where your hand remains steady enough for detailed work, while your consciousness has been altered enough to access the visionary states that produce your most compelling pieces. The collectors who still purchase your work have become connoisseurs of artistic desperation, drawn to paintings that capture authentic experiences of suffering and transcendence that more stable artists cannot access or convincingly simulate. They speak of your work with reverence reserved for religious artifacts, describing canvases that seem to bleed real emotion and visual experiences that transport viewers into altered states of consciousness without chemical assistance. But these collectors also represent a form of exploitation that you're increasingly aware of, but powerless to resist. They're purchasing pieces of your soul, literally profiting from your systematic self-destruction while maintaining comfortable distance from the human costs. Their patronage enables your paintings have become commodified suffering, transformed into luxury goods that allow wealthy individuals to experience the romance of artistic torment without accepting any responsibility for the conditions that produce such work. The underground economy that sustains Bohemian Paris has revealed its true nature as your circumstances have become more desperate. What once appeared to be community of artists supporting each other through shared resources and mutual aid has proven to be a complex web of dependencies and power relationships that mirror the conventional society you thought you were rejecting. The same hierarchies exist here, simply disguised by artistic rhetoric and chemical camaraderie that makes exploitation feel like friendship. Your survival strategies have become increasingly sophisticated and morally ambiguous as conventional sources of income have disappeared. You've learned to navigate the grey areas between artistic collaboration and prostitution, intellectual partnership and emotional manipulation, cultural rebellion and criminal activity. Each compromise feels like necessary adaptation to circumstances beyond your control, but the cumulative effect has been transformation of someone who once possessed clear moral boundaries into a person willing to consider almost any arrangement that might provide temporary relief from constant financial and physical pressure. The medical realities of your situation have become impossible to ignore as your body begins to rebel against treatment. It was never designed to endure. The romantic notion of artistic suffering has been replaced by grinding awareness of how chemical dependency systematically destroys human physiology in ways that no amount of creative achievement can justify or compensate for. Your hands, once your most valuable tools, now shake uncontrollably during withdrawal periods that make detailed artistic work impossible. Your teeth have begun to loosen and discolor, Your skin has developed unhealthy pallor that no amount of cosmetics can disguise. And your digestive system has become so compromised that maintaining adequate nutrition requires constant attention and resources you can rarely afford. The bohemian lifestyle that once seemed to offer unlimited freedom has revealed itself as a form of imprisonment more complete than any conventional social constraint you originally sought to escape. The intellectual stimulation that initially drew you to these circles has been replaced by conversations that circle endlessly around topics of supply, quality, and access to substances that have become more important than any artistic or philosophical concern. The brilliant debates about consciousness, creativity, and cultural revolution have devolved into practical discussions about dealers, prices, and techniques for managing withdrawal symptoms while maintaining enough functionality to continue earning money through whatever means remain available. Your romantic relationships have become casualties of this transformation, unable to survive the constant pressure of addiction that makes genuine intimacy impossible. Love requires vulnerability and emotional availability that chemical dependency systematically destroys, replacing authentic connection with transactions based on mutual need for drugs, money, or temporary relief from isolation that addiction inevitably creates. The passionate affairs that once embodied bohemian ideals of free love have been replaced by arrangements that serve primarily practical functions, related to survival rather than emotional fulfillment. The seasonal rhythms that once marked a natural progression of time have been replaced by cycles of chemical availability and withdrawal that create their own temporal reality disconnected from external world. Your calendar is marked not by holidays or artistic deadlines, but by patterns of supply and demand that determine when you can work, when you must rest, and when you're forced to spend precious resources on substances rather than food, shelter, or art supplies. The philosophical questions that once seemed so important about the nature of consciousness, the purpose of art, and the meaning of authentic existence have been reduced to more immediate concerns about physical survival and maintaining just enough functionality to continue participating in artistic community that represents your only remaining source of identity and purpose. The grand theories about creativity and chemical enhancement have been replaced by practical knowledge about managing addiction while preserving whatever fragments of talent remain accessible. Your studio space has become shrine to this transformation, filled with evidence of both your artistic achievements and your systematic decline. Brilliant paintings hang next to incomplete works abandoned when withdrawal symptoms made continued effort impossible. Art supplies purchased during periods of relative prosperity sit unused beside makeshift drug preparation equipment that has become as essential as brushes and paints for your daily routine. The future that once seemed unlimited with possibilities for artistic growth and cultural influence has contracted to immediate concerns about surviving each day while maintaining enough creative capacity to justify continued existence within community that no longer offers sanctuary, but rather serves as elaborate trap disguised as artistic paradise. The dawn light filtering through your grimy window illuminates a truth you've been avoiding for months. This isn't just about artistic exploration anymore. You've become part of a machine, a system that feeds on creative souls and spits out hollow shells wrapped in bohemian rhetoric. The realization hits you with the force of cold absinthe on an empty stomach, leaving you nauseous and trembling in ways that have nothing to do with withdrawal. Your morning routine now includes checking which friends are still alive. The obituaries in the artistic community aren't published in newspapers, but whispered through cafe networks, passed along with the same casual efficiency used to share information about new drug shipments or gallery openings. Marie Claire overdosed last Tuesday. Antoine hasn't been seen in a week, and his landlord found paintings scattered across his floor like fallen leaves. Simone was committed to an asylum after being found painting with her own blood, convinced that only authentic bodily fluids could capture the essence of human suffering. These aren't distant tragedies, but immediate warnings about your own trajectory. Each name represents someone who started exactly where you began, filled with artistic ambition and convinced their superior talent would protect them from the fate that claimed lesser artists. The mathematical progression is undeniable. First you experiment, then you require, then you depend, then you disappear. You're currently somewhere between stages 3 and 4, watching the ground rush toward you while still believing you might somehow learn to fly. The psychological manipulation that sustains this world has become visible to you in ways that would have seemed impossible during your early months of intoxicated bliss. The dealers aren't just selling drugs, they're selling identity, community, and purpose to people whose conventional support systems have been systematically destroyed. They understand that addiction to substances is temporary compared to addiction to the lifestyle, the social connections, and the artistic validation that makes normal existence seem colourless and meaningless. Your dealer, Henri, exemplifies this sophisticated approach to human exploitation. He speaks fluent German, quotes Baudelaire from memory, and maintains detailed knowledge about contemporary artistic movements that allows him to discuss your work with genuine insight and appreciation. His apartment doubles as an informal gallery where he displays pieces created by his clients, creating the illusion that he's a patron of the arts rather than someone who profits from systematic destruction of human potential. Henri's business model depends on maintaining his customers at precisely the right level of dependency. Too little addiction, and they might develop independence that threatens his control. Too much, and they become unreliable sources of revenue who produce unmarketable work. He's learned to calibrate his product and pricing to keep artists functioning just above the threshold of complete collapse, maximizing both their productivity and their dependence on his services. The conversations you have with Henri reveal the cold calculation behind his cultivated persona of artistic sophisticate. He discusses your paintings with enthusiasm that feels genuine until you realize he's actually evaluating their market potential and adjusting his treatment of you based on assessments of your future earning capacity. When your work was selling well, he offered credit and premium quality drugs. As your market value has declined, his terms have become increasingly harsh and his product increasingly adulterated with substances that provide less relief while creating greater dependency. Your fellow artists have become unwilling participants in this economic ecosystem, competing for Henri's favor and access to higher quality drugs through artistic production that's increasingly evaluated by commercial rather than creative criteria. The community that once seemed to represent rejection of bourgeois values has revealed itself as marketplace where human creativity is commodified more brutally than in any conventional business environment you originally sought to escape. The political discussions that once seemed so revolutionary now appear as elaborate forms of entertainment designed to make participants feel intellectually sophisticated while distracting them from the reality of their systematic exploitation. The anarchist rhetoric about overthrowing capitalist systems rings hollow when you realize that the Bohemian community operates according to economic principles that are more ruthlessly capitalistic than anything found in conventional society. Your artistic vision has become hostage to forces beyond your creative control in ways that make mockery of Bohemian ideals about artistic freedom and authentic expression. The paintings you create are increasingly influenced by calculations about what Henri might find marketable, what collectors are currently seeking, and what level of chemical enhancement will produce work that appears visionary without becoming completely incomprehensible to potential buyers. The technical aspects of your artistic practice have deteriorated in direct proportion to your chemical dependency, creating cruel irony where the substances that were supposed to enhance your creativity have systematically destroyed your ability to execute the visions they sometimes provide. Your hand-eye coordination has become unreliable. Your color perception has been altered in ways that make accurate mixing impossible, and your attention span has been reduced to fragments that make completing complex compositions increasingly difficult. the storage and preservation of your artwork has become secondary consideration compared to immediate needs for food, shelter, and drugs. Paintings that once represented months of careful work are now treated as disposable commodities to be sold quickly for whatever price they might bring. You've watched pieces you created during periods of genuine inspiration disappear into collections, where they'll be appreciated primarily as curiosities representing authentic bohemian experience rather than serious artistic achievements. Your relationship with your own creative output has become increasingly dissociated, as economic desperation forces you to produce work primarily for survival, rather than artistic expression. The paintings you create now feel like products manufactured to meet market demand, rather than authentic expressions of your inner vision or emotional experience. The joy that once accompanied successful completion of challenging pieces has been replaced by relief that you've created something potentially saleable before withdrawal symptoms make continued work impossible. The physical spaces where you create art have become contaminated by activities and associations that make genuine creative focus increasingly difficult to achieve. Your studio serves simultaneously as living space, drug preparation area, meeting place for desperate transactions, and workspace for artistic creation. The atmosphere has become so charged with anxiety, desperation, and chemical residue that achieving the mental clarity necessary for inspired work requires chemical assistance that ultimately undermines the very clarity it temporarily provides. Your tools and materials reflect the same degradation that characterizes every other aspect of your bohemian existence. Brushes that once received careful cleaning and maintenance are now used until they become unusable, then discarded in favor of whatever implements might be immediately available. Paints are stretched with whatever substances might extend their volume, regardless of how such adulterants might affect color quality or permanence. Canvas and paper are selected based on cost rather than suitability for the artistic techniques you're attempting to employ. The lighting in your workspace has become inadequate for accurate color assessment, forcing you to make artistic decisions based on approximations that may prove disastrously wrong when your work is viewed under proper illumination. The lack of proper ventilation means you're constantly breathing fumes from paints, solvents, and chemical substances that compound the health problems already created by your drug use. Your workspace has become actively hostile to the creative process it's supposed to support. The social dynamics surrounding your artistic practice have been poisoned by the constant presence of financial desperation that makes every interaction potentially transactional. Fellow artists view your work through the lens of competition for limited resources rather than appreciation for creative achievement. Collectors approach your paintings as investments in authentic bohemian experience rather than support for artistic development. Even casual observers seem to be evaluating your work primarily for evidence of the dramatic lifestyle that produced it. Your artistic education, such as it was, provided no preparation for navigating the business aspects of surviving as an artist in an environment where conventional career development strategies are not only useless, but actively counterproductive. The Bohemian rejection of bourgeois values extends to rejection of practical skills that might enable sustainable artistic careers. You've been encouraged to view commercial success with suspicion while simultaneously depending on sales to survive, creating impossible double bind that makes failure almost inevitable. The seasonal patterns that once provided natural rhythm for creative work have been disrupted by lifestyle that operates according to artificial schedules, determined by drug availability and withdrawal cycles, rather than natural energy patterns or inspiration. Your most productive creative periods now occur during narrow windows, when chemical enhancement provides temporary clarity without completely undermining manual dexterity or cognitive function. Your artistic influences have become increasingly limited to work produced within the bohemian community, creating insular aesthetic that reflects shared chemical experiences rather than broader cultural engagement or technical development. The isolation from mainstream artistic education and exhibition opportunities means your work is developing according to criteria that may have little relevance to lasting artistic achievement or historical significance. The documentation and critical evaluation of your work has become impossible as the Bohemian community lacks institutional structures for serious artistic assessment or career development. Your paintings are evaluated primarily by other addicted artists whose judgment is compromised by their own chemical dependencies and financial desperation. The absence of objective critical feedback makes it impossible to distinguish between genuine artistic development and self-deception, encouraged by chemical enhancement and social validation from equally compromised peers. Your artistic legacy, assuming you survive long enough to create one, will be inseparable from the circumstances that produced it, making it impossible for future viewers to evaluate your creative achievements independently of their fascination with or revulsion toward the lifestyle that enabled their creation. The romantic mythology surrounding Bohemian artistic suffering ensures that your work will be appreciated primarily as historical artifact rather than timeless creative expression that transcends its origins in chemical dependency and social rebellion. The morning sun is climbing higher over Montmartre, casting harsh light on realities you can no longer avoid through chemical haze or artistic rationalization. The choice facing you isn't between artistic authenticity and bourgeois compromise, but between continued descent into systematic self-destruction disguised as creative exploration and some form of recovery that might preserve whatever remains of your artistic potential before it's completely consumed by the beautiful nightmare you've mistaken for paradise. The harsh morning light reveals something you've been refusing to acknowledge for weeks. Your hands aren't just shaking from withdrawal anymore. They're developing the permanent tremor that marks artists who've crossed the invisible line between chemical enhancement and irreversible neurological damage. The fine motor control that once allowed you to capture the delicate interplay of light and shadow in your portraits has been replaced by movements so erratic that even basic sketching requires multiple attempts to achieve acceptable results. Your artistic technique, once your greatest pride and the foundation of your professional reputation, has become a casualty of the very substances that were supposed to liberate your creative potential. The precise brushwork that critics once praised as evidence of exceptional training and natural talent now resembles the crude marks of someone learning to paint for the first time. Your color mixing, previously intuitive and sophisticated, has devolved into muddy approximations that bear little resemblance to the luminous palettes that once distinguished your work from that of less accomplished peers. The intellectual clarity that initially drew you to discussions about consciousness and creativity has been replaced by cognitive fog that makes sustained concentration nearly impossible. The philosophical conversations that once stimulated your artistic thinking now feel like performances where you're desperately trying to remember lines from a play you once knew by heart. Your contributions to artistic debates have become repetitive and shallow, recycling half-remembered insights from periods when your mind was sharper and your observations more original. Your memory, both short-term and long-term, has begun to fail in ways that affect not just your daily functioning, but your ability to learn from experience and develop as an artist. Techniques you spent years mastering now feel foreign and uncertain. Color relationships that once seemed obvious require conscious effort to identify. The visual vocabulary that allowed you to translate complex emotions into painted form has been systematically eroded by chemical alterations to the neural pathways that supported your artistic intelligence. The artistic community's response to your deterioration follows predictable patterns that you've witnessed in the decline of other talented individuals who preceded you down this path. Initial expressions of concern give way to uncomfortable distance as your problems become too obvious to ignore or romanticize. Fellow artists begin to avoid collaborative projects that might be compromised by your unreliability. Gallery owners stop returning your calls. Collectors who once competed for your work develop sudden amnesia about their previous enthusiasm for your artistic vision. Your reputation within Bohemian circles has shifted from promising young artist to cautionary tale, though this transformation is disguised by the elaborate euphemisms that allow the community to avoid confronting the systematic destruction it enables and celebrates. You're no longer described as talented, but as authentic. Your work isn't praised for its technical excellence, but for its rawness. Your obvious deterioration is reframed as deepening artistic maturity that comes from embracing experiences that less committed artists avoid. The economic mathematics of your situation have become brutally simple. Each painting you complete requires investment of time, materials, and chemical enhancement that costs more than the reduced prices your work now commands. You're operating at a loss that grows larger with each piece you create, sustained only by the desperate hope that your next painting might somehow break through to commercial success that could stabilize your circumstances and provide breathing room for artistic recovery. Your living arrangements reflect this downward spiral in ways that compound your creative difficulties. The studio space you once maintained with pride has been traded for cheaper accommodations that lack proper lighting, ventilation, and security. Your art supplies are stored in conditions that damage their quality. Your completed works are vulnerable to theft, damage, and deterioration that can eliminate months of effort in moments. The physical environment necessary for serious artistic work has been sacrificed to immediate survival needs. The social isolation that accompanies advanced addiction has cut you off from sources of emotional support and practical assistance that might have helped you navigate this crisis. Family members who once provided financial safety nets have been alienated by your choices and behavior. Former friends from conventional society have been driven away by the dramatic changes in your personality and priorities. Your social circle has contracted to include only other addicted artists whose advice and companionship, however well-intentioned, cannot provide the objective perspective necessary for meaningful change. Your romantic relationships have become impossible to sustain as chemical dependency systematically destroys the emotional availability and physical reliability that intimate partnerships require. The passionate love affairs that once seemed to embody bohemian ideals of free expression have been replaced by desperate arrangements with people whose own addictions make them equally incapable of genuine care or commitment. Love has become another commodity to be traded for temporary access to drugs, money, or shelter. The daily routine that once felt like adventurous exploration of consciousness has become mechanical repetition of activities designed solely to prevent withdrawal symptoms and maintain a minimal functionality. Your mornings are spent assessing damage from the previous night and calculating how much chemical assistance you'll need to get through another day. Your afternoons are devoted to desperate attempts to create saleable work before your hands become too unsteady to control a brush. Your evenings are consumed by the complex negotiations required to secure drugs for the following day's survival. The artistic vision that brought you to Paris has been gradually replaced by practical concerns about maintaining enough stability to continue participating in a lifestyle that no longer offers creative fulfillment but has become your only source of identity and social connection. Your paintings now serve primarily as evidence that you're still functioning rather than expressions of genuine artistic insight or emotional truth. The gap between what you once hoped to achieve and what you're actually creating has become so vast that acknowledging it threatens the psychological defenses that make continued existence bearable. Your physical health has deteriorated to the point where ignoring medical reality requires conscious effort and elaborate self-deception. Your weight has dropped below levels that can sustain normal physiological function. Your skin has developed the greyish pallor that marks advanced malnutrition and systemic toxicity. Your teeth are loosening, and your hair is falling out in quantities that cannot be attributed to artistic stress or bohemian lifestyle choices. Your body is sending unmistakable signals that the chemical experiments you've been conducting are approaching fatal conclusions. The medical care available to you consists primarily of other addicted artists sharing folk remedies and dangerous advice based on their own desperate attempts to manage similar health crises. Professional medical treatment remains financially impossible and culturally suspect within a community that views conventional healthcare as evidence of bourgeois weakness and failure to embrace the authentic suffering that produces great art. The romantic notion of the tortured artist has become literal torture that serves no creative purpose. Your artistic materials have become makeshift and unreliable, as financial desperation forces you to substitute cheaper alternatives that produce unpredictable results. The paints you mix yourself using whatever pigments you can afford create colors that fade, separate, or change in ways that make your finished works unstable and potentially worthless over time. Your canvases are often recycled from previous paintings or constructed from materials never intended for artistic use. The technical foundation necessary for creating works that might survive long enough to establish lasting artistic reputation has been systematically undermined by economic necessity. The storage and preservation of completed works has become impossible, as your living situations become increasingly temporary and chaotic. Paintings that represent weeks of effort are damaged by improper storage, lost during frequent moves, or stolen by desperate neighbors who recognize their potential value. Your artistic output is being destroyed almost as quickly as you can create it, ensuring that even if you somehow achieve artistic breakthrough, the physical evidence might not survive to establish your reputation or provide financial stability. Your artistic development has stagnated as chemical dependency prevents the sustained effort and clear judgment necessary for technical growth or conceptual evolution. The skills that continue to improve in healthy artists through practice and experimentation have begun to atrophy in ways that may be irreversible. Your artistic education, such as it was, provided foundation for continued learning that has been systematically undermined by lifestyle choices that prevent the kind of focused study and disciplined practice that artistic mastery requires. The criticism and feedback that might help you identify problems and develop solutions comes primarily from other compromised artists whose judgment is equally affected by chemical dependency and financial desperation. The objective evaluation necessary for artistic growth is impossible within a community where everyone's survival depends on maintaining elaborate fictions about the benefits of systematic self-destruction disguised as creative exploration. Honest assessment of artistic quality becomes emotionally dangerous when it threatens the rationalizations that make continued existence psychologically bearable. Your artistic influences have become increasingly narrow and self-referential as isolation from mainstream cultural developments limits your exposure to new ideas and techniques. The broader artistic conversations happening in galleries, museums, and academic institutions remain inaccessible to someone whose lifestyle has placed them outside respectable artistic society. Your work is developing according to criteria established within an insular community whose aesthetic standards may have little relevance to lasting artistic achievement. The documentation of your artistic career has become non-existent as the Bohemian community lacks institutional structures for maintaining records or archives that might preserve evidence of significant creative developments. Your paintings disappear into private collections or underground markets where they cannot contribute to scholarly understanding of artistic movements or individual creative evolution. Your potential contribution to art history is being systematically erased by the same lifestyle that was supposed to liberate your creative potential. The morning shadows are growing shorter, and you realize that another day of difficult choices lies ahead. The substances that once promised to unlock unlimited creative potential have become prison bars that grow stronger with each passing day. The artistic community that seemed to offer sanctuary from conventional society has revealed itself as an elaborate trap that profits from the systematic destruction of the very creativity it claims to celebrate. Your reflection in the cracked mirror shows someone caught between two impossible alternatives. Continuing down this path leads to certain destruction, but the prospect of abandoning everything that has given your life meaning feels like a different kind of death. The Bohemian paradise has become a beautiful nightmare from which awakening might be more terrifying than remaining asleep. The choice that faces you isn't between success and failure, but between different forms of surrender to forces that were always more powerful than your individual will or artistic talent. The chemical haze that once seemed to reveal profound truths about consciousness and creativity now obscures the simple reality that survival requires acknowledging the difference between authentic artistic exploration and elaborate self-deception designed to justify systematic self-destruction. The morning light streaming through your grimy window illuminates not just the squalor of your immediate circumstances, but the brutal mathematics of a lifestyle that consumes more human potential than it creates, leaving behind romantic mythology built on the corpses of talents that might have flourished under different circumstances. The question that haunts this moment of unwelcome clarity isn't whether you can continue living this way, because the evidence suggests that you cannot. The question is whether enough of your original artistic vision and human dignity remains intact to attempt the almost impossible task of rebuilding a life that might still have room for creative expression that serves purposes beyond mere survival in a world that has revealed its fundamental indifference to individual human potential. The weight of this realization settles into your bones like the winter cold that seeps through the cracked walls of your garret. You've become a living experiment in the limits of human endurance, a test case for how much punishment the creative spirit can absorb before it breaks completely. The romantic notions about artistic suffering that once seemed so profound now taste like ashes in your mouth. Bitter reminders of how easily noble ideals can be twisted into justifications for systematic self-harm. Your morning routine has evolved into a complex ritual of assessment and preparation that would be comical if it weren't so desperate. You check your pulse, test your hand steadiness, evaluate your mental clarity, and calculate how much chemical assistance you'll need to function at even the most basic level. The mirror reflects back someone who has aged years in months, whose eyes hold knowledge that no art school could have taught, and no amount of success could justify acquiring. The technical aspects of your artistic practice have become exercises in adaptation and compensation rather than creative expression. You've learned to paint around your tremors, to work in shorter sessions before exhaustion overwhelms you, and to simplify compositions that once showcased your technical virtuosity. Your paintings now bear the unmistakable marks of compromise, created by someone working within constraints imposed not by artistic vision, but by physical and mental deterioration. The gallery system that once seemed so important to your career ambitions has revealed itself as just another marketplace where human suffering is commodified and sold to collectors who prefer their art to come with authentic stories of destruction. The paintings you created during your healthiest periods are now valued less than the works you produce in obvious distress, because buyers have learned to associate artistic quality with personal catastrophe in ways that make recovery financially counterproductive. Your correspondence with the outside world has dwindled to nothing, as the gap between your current reality and the expectations of normal society has become impossible to bridge. The letters from home remain unopened because you lack the emotional strength to confront the concern and disappointment they contain. Your family's love, once a source of comfort and security, has become another form of pressure that you're too fragile to bear. The seasonal changes that once marked natural rhythms of inspiration and rest have been replaced by cycles of supply and demand that operate according to logic completely divorced from human need or creative development. Your most productive periods now coincide with times when drugs are readily available and relatively pure, while your fallow periods correspond to shortages that leave you too sick to work regardless of inspiration or artistic vision. Your artistic education, such as it was, provided no preparation for the business of surviving as a professional victim of your own choices. The Bohemian community encourages artistic authenticity, but offers no practical guidance for maintaining the physical and mental health that authentic creativity requires. You've been trained to view commercial considerations with suspicion, while simultaneously depending on sales for survival. creating impossible contradictions that make failure almost inevitable. The storage and preservation of your work has become a constant source of anxiety as your living situations grow increasingly unstable and temporary. Paintings that represent weeks of effort are vulnerable to damage, theft, or loss during the frequent moves that characterize life at the bottom of the Bohemian hierarchy. Your artistic legacy is being destroyed almost as quickly as you can create it, ensuring that even breakthrough works might not survive to establish lasting reputation. Your relationships with other artists have become increasingly transactional as everyone struggles with similar problems and has fewer resources to share. The community that once seemed to offer mutual support and creative collaboration has devolved into a collection of desperate individuals competing for limited opportunities while maintaining elaborate pretenses about artistic solidarity and shared revolutionary purpose. The philosophical discussions that once stimulated your thinking have become repetitive cycles of rationalization designed to make participants feel intellectually sophisticated while avoiding practical questions about sustainability and consequences. The same conversations about consciousness and creativity repeat endlessly because nobody wants to acknowledge that the lifestyle producing these insights is systematically destroying the minds capable of developing them further. Your daily schedule has contracted to essential activities required for bare survival, leaving little time or energy for the sustained effort that serious artistic development requires. The hours once devoted to experimentation, study, and practice have been consumed by the complex logistics of maintaining chemical dependency while preserving enough functionality to generate income through whatever means remain available. The physical spaces where you create art have become contaminated by activities and associations that make focused creative work increasingly difficult. Your studio doubles as living space, drug preparation area, meeting place for desperate transactions, and workspace for artistic creation. The atmosphere is so charged with anxiety and chemical residue that achieving mental clarity requires substances that ultimately undermine the very clarity they temporarily provide. Your artistic influences have become limited to work produced within the Bohemian community, creating insular aesthetic that reflects shared chemical experiences rather than broader cultural engagement. The isolation from mainstream artistic education and exhibition opportunities means your work develops according to criteria that may have little relevance to lasting achievement or historical significance. The documentation and critical evaluation of your work has become impossible as the community lacks institutional structures for serious assessment or career development. Your paintings are evaluated primarily by other compromised artists whose judgment is affected by their own dependencies and financial desperation. The absence of objective feedback makes it impossible to distinguish between genuine development and self-deception, encouraged by chemical enhancement and social validation. Your artistic materials reflect the same degradation that characterizes every other aspect of your existence. Brushes that once received careful maintenance are used until they become unusable, then discarded for whatever implements might be available. Paints are stretched with substances that affect color quality and permanence. Canvas and paper are selected based on cost, rather than suitability for the techniques you're attempting to employ. The lighting in your workspace has become inadequate for accurate color assessment, forcing you to make decisions based on approximations that may prove disastrously wrong when viewed under proper illumination. The lack of ventilation means you're constantly breathing fumes that compound health problems already created by drug use. Your workspace has become actively hostile to the creative process it's supposed to support. The social dynamics surrounding your practice have been poisoned by constant financial desperation that makes every interaction potentially transactional. Fellow artists view your work through the lens of competition rather than appreciation. Collectors approach your paintings as investments in authentic experience rather than support for artistic development. Even casual observers seem to evaluate your work primarily for evidence of the dramatic lifestyle that produced it. Your memory, both short-term and long-term, has begun to fail in ways that affect your ability to learn from experience and develop as an artist. Techniques you spent years mastering now feel foreign and uncertain. The visual vocabulary that allowed you to translate complex emotions into painted form has been systematically eroded by chemical alterations to neural pathways that supported your artistic intelligence. The medical realities of your situation have become impossible to ignore as your body rebels against treatment. It was never designed to endure. Your hands, once your most valuable tools, shake uncontrollably during withdrawal periods. Your teeth have begun to loosen and discolor. Your digestive system has become so compromised that maintaining adequate nutrition requires constant attention and resources you can rarely afford. The international implications of your participation in this world have begun to register as authorities throughout Europe recognize the connections between artistic communities and political subversion. Your involvement in radical discussions, combined with your access to information about wealthy patrons and foreign expatriates, has made you person of interest to officials increasingly concerned about intersection of cultural movements and security threats. Your artistic vision has become simultaneously more profound and more unstable as chemical alterations to consciousness have intensified. The paintings you create during deep intoxication possess qualities that observers find impossible to dismiss as mere drug-induced hallucinations, suggesting that chemical experimentation has unlocked genuine insights into human consciousness and creative expression that conventional training cannot achieve. But these moments of transcendent achievement come at increasingly terrible costs to your stability. The periods between successful creative sessions have become longer and more torturous, filled with anxiety and creative paralysis that make you question whether your artistic gifts are worth the price you're paying to access them. You've begun to suspect that the substances, once enhancing your creativity, are now preventing you from achieving heights you reached before dependency took control. The question of whether you can survive this lifestyle long enough to fulfill your potential has become the central tension defining your existence. Every day brings evidence of talented individuals whose stories serve as cautionary tales about ultimate consequences of pursuing authenticity through chemical enhancement. Some have died from overdoses, others have been committed to asylums, and a few have simply disappeared from the community entirely, their fates unknown but probably tragic. Your awareness of these examples hasn't provided motivation necessary to change course, because the alternative, returning to conventional society and abandoning your artistic ambitions, seems like death even more terrifying than the physical risks associated with continued drug use. The Bohemian lifestyle has become your entire identity, and losing it would mean losing everything that makes you feel significant rather than just another anonymous individual struggling to survive in an indifferent world. The morning light grows stronger, casting harsh shadows that reveal details you've learned to ignore during the merciful darkness. Your easel holds a canvas you don't remember starting, covered with brushstrokes that seem to have been applied by someone else's hand. The colours are muddy and uncertain, bearing no resemblance to the luminous palettes that once distinguished your work from less accomplished peers. The woman in the mirror stares back with eyes that have seen too much and understood too little. She represents everything you once hoped to become and everything you've actually achieved. A living contradiction wrapped in bohemian rhetoric and chemical dependency. The choice facing her isn't between success and failure, but between different forms of surrender to forces that were always more powerful than individual will or artistic talent. The beautiful nightmare of Montmartre continues around you, indifferent to your personal crisis and the thousands of similar stories playing out in studios and cafes throughout the quarter. The machine that feeds on creative souls operates with mechanical efficiency, processing dreams into commodities and transforming human potential into profit margins that benefit everyone except the artists whose lives fuel the entire enterprise. Your story is both unique and utterly predictable, a variation on themes that have played out countless times before and will continue long after your particular tragedy reaches its inevitable conclusion. The only question remaining is whether you'll become another cautionary tale whispered through cafe networks, or somehow find strength to write a different ending to a narrative that seems determined to conclude with destruction, disguised as artistic authenticity. The morning sun climbs higher over Paris, illuminating a city that continues to attract dreamers and destroy them with equal efficiency, indifferent to the human cost of maintaining its reputation as the world's capital of artistic innovation and cultural rebellion. Your reflection wavers in the cracked glass, caught between what was promised and what has been delivered, between the romance of Bohemian idealism and the brutal mathematics of systematic self-destruction presented as creative liberation. The afternoon brings no relief from the morning's harsh revelations, only a different quality of light that illuminates the same inescapable truths from new angles. Your neighbors in this crumbling building have begun to avoid eye contact when you pass in the narrow hallways, their discomfort a mirror reflecting back the reality you've been desperately trying to avoid acknowledging. The casual conversations that once flowed easily between artists sharing similar struggles have been replaced by hurried nods and quickly averted gazes that speak louder than any words about how far you've fallen from the community's acceptable standards of functional dysfunction. The economics of your daily existence have reached a mathematical breaking point where the cost of maintaining enough chemical stability to work exceeds any potential income from the art you're capable of producing in your current state. This isn't just financial pressure anymore. It's an impossible equation that grows more unsolvable with each passing day. Your dealer Henri has begun to treat you with the cold professionalism reserved for customers whose credit has become questionable and whose future earning potential appears increasingly doubtful. The artistic technique that once set you apart from amateur painters has deteriorated beyond the point where practice or determination can compensate for the neurological damage you've inflicted upon yourself. Your brushstrokes, once confident and precise, now wander across canvases like the uncertain steps of someone learning to walk again after a devastating injury. The muscle memory that allowed you to execute complex compositions without conscious thought has been systematically erased by substances that promise to enhance your capabilities while secretly destroying the physical foundations that made artistic expression possible. Your color perception has been altered in ways that make accurate mixing impossible, forcing you to work with approximations that bear little resemblance to the sophisticated palettes that once distinguished your work. The subtle gradations and luminous effects that critics praised as evidence of exceptional training now elude you completely, replaced by crude color relationships that would embarrass a first-year art student. The visual intelligence that allowed you to see and capture relationships between light, shadow, and form has been compromised beyond recovery. The intellectual clarity that once enabled you to engage in sophisticated discussions about artistic theory and cultural movements has been replaced by cognitive fog that makes sustained concentration nearly impossible. The philosophical insights that seemed so profound during your early experiments with consciousness expansion now feel like half-remembered fragments of someone else's thoughts, accessible only in brief moments between the crushing anxiety of withdrawal and the artificial euphoria of chemical relief. Your living space has devolved into something that would be unrecognizable to the ambitious young artist who first arrived in Paris with dreams of cultural revolution and creative breakthrough. The orderly studio where you once worked with methodical precision has been replaced by chaos that reflects your internal state more accurately than any self-portrait you could paint. Art supplies are mixed with drug paraphernalia, finished paintings lean against walls sticky with substances you'd rather not identify, and the smell of desperation has become so pervasive that you've stopped noticing it. The social isolation that accompanies advanced addiction has severed your connections not just to conventional society, but to the Bohemian community that once provided identity and purpose. The artists who remain willing to associate with you are themselves so compromised by similar problems that their company offers no relief from your circumstances, only confirmation that you're not alone in your descent toward destruction. The conversations you share revolve endlessly around topics of supply, quality, and access to substances that have become more important than any artistic or philosophical concern. Your romantic relationships have become casualties of a transformation that makes genuine intimacy impossible. The emotional availability and physical reliability that partnerships require have been systematically destroyed by chemical dependency that reduces all human connections to transactions based on mutual need for drugs, money, or temporary relief from isolation. Love has become another commodity in an economy where everything is ultimately exchangeable for the substances that maintain your ability to function at even the most basic level. The physical symptoms of your lifestyle have progressed beyond the point where they can be disguised by cosmetics or dismissed as temporary side effects of artistic exploration. Your weight loss has become severe enough that clothes hang loose on a frame that seems to shrink daily. Your skin has developed the grayish pallor that marks advanced malnutrition and systemic toxicity. Your hair falls out in quantities that leave visible patches on your scalp, and your teeth have begun to loosen in ways that affect your ability to eat the limited food you can afford. The medical care available within the Bohemian community consists primarily of folk remedies and dangerous advice shared by other desperate individuals whose own health problems make them unreliable sources of guidance. Professional medical treatment remains financially impossible and culturally suspect within a community that views conventional healthcare as evidence of bourgeois weakness. The romantic notion of artistic suffering has become literal torture that serves no creative purpose while accelerating your physical deterioration. Your artistic output has become a grotesque parody of your former capabilities, created by someone whose technical skills have been systematically destroyed by the same substances that were supposed to unlock unlimited creative potential. The paintings you produce now bear little resemblance to the work that once earned critical praise and collector interest. They're crude approximations of artistic expression, created by hands that shake too violently for detailed work, and guided by vision compromised by chemical alterations to your nervous system. The storage and preservation of whatever work you do manage to complete has become impossible as your living situations grow increasingly temporary and chaotic. Paintings that represent days of effort are vulnerable to damage, theft, or loss during frequent moves necessitated by your inability to maintain stable housing. Your artistic legacy is being destroyed almost as quickly as you can create it, ensuring that even if you somehow produce breakthrough work, the physical evidence might not survive to establish lasting reputation. The gallery owners and collectors who once competed for your work have developed sophisticated systems for identifying artists whose addiction has progressed beyond the point where investment might yield profitable returns. They recognize the telltale signs of advanced dependency and adjust their interest accordingly, treating you with polite dismissal that's more devastating than outright rejection. Your market value has plummeted to levels that make survival through art sales mathematically impossible. The international implications of your participation in radical political discussions have begun to create additional layers of danger that extend far beyond personal health risks. Your involvement in anarchist gatherings, combined with your access to information about wealthy patrons and foreign expatriates, has attracted attention from police officials, increasingly concerned about connections between artistic communities and political subversion. The Bohemian lifestyle that once seemed to offer unlimited freedom has revealed itself as a form of surveillance that makes you vulnerable to prosecution for activities you barely remember participating in. Your daily routine has contracted to essential activities required for bare survival, leaving no time or energy for the sustained effort that artistic development requires. Hours once devoted to experimentation, study, and practice have been consumed by complex logistics of maintaining chemical dependency while preserving enough functionality to generate income through whatever means remain available. The creative exploration that brought you to Paris has been replaced by mechanical repetition of survival strategies that grow less effective with each passing day. The philosophical questions that once seemed so important about consciousness, creativity, and authentic existence have been reduced to immediate concerns about preventing withdrawal symptoms and maintaining minimal functionality. The grand theories about artistic enhancement through chemical experimentation have been replaced by practical knowledge about managing addiction while preserving whatever fragments of talent remain accessible during brief windows of relative stability. Your correspondence with the outside world has ceased entirely, as the gap between your current reality and normal social expectations has become impossible to bridge. Letters from home remain unopened because you lack emotional strength to confront the concern and disappointment they contain. Your family's love has become another source of pressure that you're too fragile to bear. Another reminder of the life you've systematically destroyed in pursuit of artistic authenticity that has proven to be elaborate self-deception. The seasonal rhythms that once provided natural structure for creative work have been replaced by artificial cycles determined by drug availability and withdrawal patterns rather than inspiration or energy levels. Your most productive periods correspond to times when substances are readily available and relatively pure, while creative paralysis coincides with shortages that leave you too sick to work, regardless of artistic vision or motivation. The documentation of your artistic career has become non-existent as the Bohemian community lacks institutional structures for maintaining records that might preserve evidence of creative development. Your paintings disappear into underground markets where they cannot contribute to scholarly understanding of artistic movements or individual evolution. Your potential contribution to art history is being systematically erased by the same lifestyle that was supposed to liberate your creative potential from conventional constraints. The morning shadows have given way to harsh afternoon light that eliminates the romantic ambiguity that darkness once provided. Your reflection in the cracked mirror shows someone caught between impossible alternatives, neither of which offers realistic hope for survival or recovery. The choice isn't between success and failure anymore, but between different forms of surrender to forces that have proven more powerful than individual will, artistic talent, or romantic idealization of creative suffering. The Bohemian paradise has revealed itself as a sophisticated trap that profits from systematic destruction of human creativity while maintaining elaborate mythologies about artistic authenticity and cultural rebellion. The community that seemed to offer sanctuary from conventional society operates according to economic principles, more ruthlessly exploitative than anything found in the bourgeois world you originally sought to escape through artistic dedication and chemical experimentation. Your story represents both unique personal tragedy and utterly predictable outcome of participating in systems designed to consume creative souls, while disguising exploitation as cultural advancement. The machine that feeds on artistic ambition operates with mechanical efficiency throughout Montmartre, processing dreams into commodities and transforming human potential into profit margins that benefit everyone except the artists whose lives provide fuel for the entire enterprise. The afternoon light continues to climb toward its peak intensity, promising evening shadows that will once again obscure the harsh realities that daylight reveals with such unforgiving clarity. But the temporary relief that darkness might provide cannot change the fundamental mathematics of a lifestyle that consumes more human potential than it creates. Leaving behind romantic mythology built on systematic destruction, presented as artistic liberation and cultural revolution that serves primarily commercial rather than creative purposes. The woman staring back from the cracked mirror embodies everything you once hoped to become and everything you've actually achieved. A living contradiction wrapped in bohemian rhetoric and chemical dependency that has transformed dreams of artistic greatness into nightmare of systematic self-destruction, disguised as authentic, creative exploration. The beautiful nightmare of Montmartre continues around you, indifferent to your personal crisis, and the thousands of similar stories playing out in studios and cafes throughout the quarter. The evening approaches with the weight of accumulated choices pressing down, like the heavy air before a thunderstorm. Your fingers trace the outline of a letter that arrived weeks ago, the paper soft from repeated handling, but never opened, never read. The handwriting belongs to your mother. You recognize it even through the haze that clouds most recognition these days. Inside those folded pages lie words of concern, perhaps offers of help, maybe ultimatums about returning home to safety and conventional respectability that now seems as foreign as a language you once knew but have forgotten how to speak. The cafe below your window begins to fill with the evening crowd, their voices rising through the floorboards in languages you can identify but no longer follow with the intellectual precision that once made you feel cosmopolitan and sophisticated. German philosophers debate with Russian émigrés, while American expatriates laugh too loudly at jokes that probably aren't funny. Their voices carrying the forced gaiety of people working hard to convince themselves they're having profound experiences rather than simply postponing inevitable reckonings with reality. Your evening routine has become a careful choreography of preparation and self-deception, each step designed to maintain the illusion that you're still participating in artistic life, rather than merely surviving it. You arrange your remaining paints with the same ritualistic precision once reserved for important creative sessions, though you know the tremor in your hands will make detailed work impossible, and the fog in your mind will prevent the sustained concentration that meaningful art requires. The mirror reflects back someone who has learned to apply makeup with the skill of a theatre performer, using rouge and powder to create the impression of health on features that tell a different story to anyone willing to look closely enough. The Bohemian aesthetic that once expressed rebellion against conventional beauty standards now serves primarily to disguise the physical evidence of systematic self-destruction that grows harder to conceal with each passing week. Your wardrobe has been reduced to garments that accommodate the dramatic weight loss while maintaining the flowing, artistic silhouette that marks you as part of the cultural underground. The beads and jewelry that once announced your rejection of bourgeois values now serve mainly to distract attention from the hollow cheeks and prominent bones that speak of malnutrition disguised as artistic dedication to higher spiritual pursuits than mere physical comfort. The preparations for evening social activities require increasingly complex calculations about chemical timing and dosage that would horrify your former self. The ambitious young woman who believed talent and determination were sufficient qualifications for artistic success. You've become an expert in managing multiple substances to achieve specific effects, balancing stimulation against sedation, euphoria against functionality, always walking the narrow line between enhancement and incapacitation. But your selection of which cafe to visit involves considerations that have nothing to do with artistic inspiration or intellectual stimulation, and everything to do with practical questions about where you're most likely to encounter potential buyers for whatever work you can produce, sources of chemical supplies, or opportunities for the kinds of transactions that keep you functioning at minimal levels while preserving the pretense of creative purpose. The evening conversations you participate in follow predictable patterns that repeat with mechanical regularity, like theatrical performances where everyone knows their lines but pretends each exchange is spontaneous and meaningful. Discussions about consciousness and creativity serve as elaborate codes for more practical negotiations about prices, quality, and availability of substances that have become more essential than food or shelter for maintaining your ability to function within this community. Your contributions to these conversations have become increasingly limited as cognitive deterioration makes sustained intellectual engagement nearly impossible. The philosophical insights that once earned you respect among serious artists have been reduced to recycled fragments of half-remembered ideas, delivered with diminishing conviction by someone who no longer believes in the premises underlying her own arguments about art and authenticity. The social dynamics you navigate each evening are poisoned by desperation that makes every interaction potentially exploitative. Fellow artists evaluate your remaining usefulness while maintaining facades of friendship and solidarity. Dealers assess your financial potential while posing as cultural sophisticates interested in supporting your artistic development. Collectors examine you like specimens representing authentic bohemian experience they can purchase and display in their conventional lives. Your artistic reputation has shifted from promising talent to tragic cautionary tale. Though this transformation is disguised by euphemisms that allow the community to avoid confronting the systematic destruction it enables and celebrates. You're no longer described as skilled, but as authentic. Your work isn't praised for technical excellence, but for rawness. Your obvious deterioration is reframed as deepening maturity that comes from embracing experiences less committed artists avoid. The financial mathematics of your evening activities have become brutally simple. Each social interaction requires investment of time and chemical enhancement that costs more than any potential return from sales, commissions, or other opportunities that might emerge from networking within increasingly impoverished and desperate artistic circles. You're operating at losses that grow larger each day, sustained only by hope that some miraculous breakthrough might stabilize your circumstances. Your living situation reflects this downward spiral in ways that compound creative difficulties and social isolation. The studio space you once maintained with pride has been traded for cheaper accommodations that lack proper lighting, ventilation, security, and the basic amenities that serious artistic work requires. Your art supplies are stored in conditions that damage their quality, while your completed works remain vulnerable to theft, damage, or deterioration that can eliminate months of effort in moments. The physical spaces where you spend your evenings have become contaminated by activities and associations that make genuine creative focus increasingly difficult to achieve. Cafes that once stimulated intellectual exchange now serve primarily as marketplaces for illegal transactions. Studios that should inspire artistic collaboration have become shooting galleries, where creativity is secondary to chemical consumption. The atmosphere everywhere is charged with anxiety and desperation that makes authentic artistic experience nearly impossible. The conversations flowing around you reveal complex webs of dependency and exploitation that mirror the conventional economic systems you thought you were rejecting through bohemian lifestyle choices. The same hierarchies exist here, simply disguised by artistic rhetoric that makes systematic abuse feel like cultural participation. Power relationships based on control of resources operate with ruthless efficiency while maintaining pretenses about community solidarity and shared revolutionary purpose. Your evening meals, when you can afford them, happen in establishments that cater to the Bohemian community's preference for cheap food that can be consumed quickly between more important activities related to chemical enhancement and artistic performance. The malnutrition that results from this approach to sustenance compounds the health problems created by drug use while contributing to cognitive deterioration that makes effective artistic work increasingly impossible. The romantic relationships you observe and occasionally participate in follow patterns of mutual exploitation, disguised as passionate artistic collaboration. Couples form alliances based on shared access to drugs rather than genuine affection, then dissolve when chemical supplies become scarce, or when one partner's deterioration makes them liability rather than asset. Love becomes another commodity in economy, where everything is ultimately exchangeable for substances that maintain minimal functionality. Your interactions with potential buyers require performances that grow more challenging as your ability to maintain convincing facades deteriorates. Collectors seeking authentic bohemian experience expect artists to embody romantic stereotypes about creative suffering while remaining functional enough to produce work they can display as evidence of their cultural sophistication. The balance between appearing authentically tortured and remaining commercially viable becomes impossible to maintain as real torture replaces theatrical suffering. The international dimensions of your evening activities expose you to risks that extend far beyond personal health concerns. The same gatherings that provide social connection and potential commercial opportunities also attract attention from authorities monitoring connections between artistic communities and political subversion. Your participation in radical discussions creates legal vulnerabilities that could result in imprisonment or deportation, adding another layer of danger to lifestyle already threatening your survival. Your artistic vision has become simultaneously more intense and more unreliable as chemical alterations to consciousness have progressed beyond the point where enhancement remains distinguishable from impairment. The insights you achieve during periods of deep intoxication possess qualities that seem profound and revolutionary, but they're increasingly difficult to translate into finished works that communicate effectively to audiences not sharing your chemically altered perspective. The technical execution of whatever artistic ideas you can generate has been compromised by neurological damage that makes precise control of artistic tools nearly impossible. Your hands shake too violently for detailed work. Your color perception has been altered in ways that make accurate mixing impossible, and your attention span has been reduced to fragments that make completing complex compositions extremely difficult without chemical assistance that ultimately undermines the stability it temporarily provides. The storage and preservation of completed works has become a constant source of anxiety as your living situations grow increasingly unstable. Paintings that represent weeks of effort are vulnerable to damage during frequent moves, necessitated by inability to maintain stable housing. Your artistic output is being destroyed almost as quickly as you can create it, ensuring that even breakthrough works might not survive to establish lasting reputation or provide foundation for career recovery. Your correspondence with the outside world has dwindled to nothing as the gap between your current reality and normal social expectations has become impossible to bridge. The energy required to maintain connections with family and former friends has been consumed by immediate survival needs, leaving you increasingly isolated from anyone who might provide perspective or assistance, not contaminated by similar problems. The seasonal rhythms that once provided natural structure for creative work have been replaced by artificial cycles determined by chemical availability rather than inspiration or energy levels. Your most productive periods now correspond to times when drugs are readily available and relatively pure, while creative paralysis coincides with shortages that leave you too sick to work, regardless of artistic vision or motivation. The evening light begins to fade toward the purple shadows that will soon provide merciful cover for activities that cannot bear scrutiny in daylight. Your reflection in the window glass shows someone preparing for another night of beautiful self-destruction, disguised as artistic exploration, another performance in the elaborate theatre of Bohemian authenticity that profits everyone except the artists, whose lives provide entertainment for audiences, seeking vicarious experiences of creative rebellion without accepting actual risks or consequences. The woman staring back from the darkening glass embodies contradictions that would have seemed impossible to your former self. The ambitious young artist who believed talent and determination were sufficient qualifications for success in the world's most sophisticated cultural environment. She represents everything you once hoped to become, and everything you've actually achieved. Living proof that dreams can transform into nightmares while maintaining appearances of romantic authenticity that disguise systematic destruction as artistic liberation. The evening activities that await you offer no genuine hope for breakthrough or recovery, only temporary relief from awareness of how completely you've betrayed your original artistic ambitions, while convincing yourself that systematic self-destruction represents authentic creative exploration rather than elaborate suicide performed for the entertainment of audiences who profit from your degradation while remaining safely distant from its consequences. The beautiful nightmare of Montmartre prepares for another night of consuming creative souls, while maintaining mythologies about artistic authenticity that serve primarily commercial rather than cultural purposes. processing human dreams into profitable commodities that benefit everyone except the artists whose lives provide raw material for enterprises that disguise exploitation as cultural advancement and revolutionary artistic expression. The night descends upon Montmartre like a velvet curtain drawn across a stage, where tragedy masquerades as art, and you find yourself preparing for yet another performance in this elaborate theatre of self-deception. Your reflection in the darkened window reveals someone who has learned to weaponize her own destruction, transforming personal catastrophe into currency that can be exchanged for temporary acceptance within a community that feeds on human misery while calling it cultural revolution. The sounds from the cafe below shift into their evening rhythm as the serious business of chemical commerce begins to replace the afternoon's pretense of intellectual discourse. You recognize the voices of dealers who pose as philosophers, customers who disguise desperation as artistic necessity, and observers who consume authentic suffering like expensive wine while maintaining safe distances from its actual consequences. This is the soundtrack of your existence now, a symphony of exploitation, conducted with such sophistication that even the victims believe they're participating in something noble and transformative. Your preparation ritual has evolved into something that would be recognizable to any professional performer, each step carefully choreographed to create maximum impact while concealing the mechanical nature of what you're actually doing. The makeup you apply serves multiple functions beyond simple vanity, disguising physical deterioration while enhancing the romantic image of artistic suffering that potential buyers expect to see when they purchase pieces of your soul disguised as paintings. The clothes you select tell carefully constructed stories about rebellion and authenticity, while hiding the practical reality that most of your wardrobe now exists primarily to accommodate the dramatic physical changes that accompany systematic chemical dependency. Your jewelry serves as both artistic statement and strategic distraction, drawing attention away from the hollow cheeks and prominent bones that speak of malnutrition, rationalized as spiritual dedication to higher pursuits than mere physical comfort. Your artistic materials have been arranged with ritualistic precision that mimics the careful preparation you once devoted to serious creative sessions, though you understand that tonight's activities will produce nothing resembling the work that once earned critical recognition and collector interest. The paints are mixed with substances that extend their volume, regardless of how such adulterants might affect color quality or permanence. Your brushes are selected more for availability than suitability for the techniques you're attempting to employ. The canvas waiting on your easel bears evidence of previous attempts that were abandoned when withdrawal symptoms made continued work impossible, or when chemical enhancement progressed beyond the point where manual dexterity could be maintained. These false starts have become archaeological layers, documenting your descent, each unsuccessful beginning marking another stage in the systematic destruction of capabilities that once distinguished you from amateur practitioners of arts and crafts therapy. Your evening destination requires careful selection, based on factors that have nothing to do with artistic inspiration or intellectual stimulation. You must consider which establishments currently offer the best combination of potential buyers, reliable chemical supplies, and social dynamics that might provide opportunities for the kinds of transactions that maintain your minimal functionality, while preserving facades of creative purpose and artistic authenticity. The walk through Montmartre's winding streets exposes you to evening atmosphere that would once have stimulated creative vision, but now serves primarily as navigation challenge, requiring concentration you can barely maintain. The romantic ambience that attracts tourists and inspires postcards home becomes obstacle course of sensory overload that threatens to trigger anxiety attacks or dissociative episodes that could compromise your ability to function during crucial business negotiations. Your arrival at Café des Artistes Perdus announces itself through familiar rituals of recognition and assessment that operate with efficiency of well-rehearsed theatre. Fellow artists evaluate your current condition while maintaining facades of friendship and concern. Dealers calculate your remaining commercial potential while posing as cultural sophisticates, interested in supporting artistic development. Collectors examine you like museum specimens, representing authentic Bohemian experience. They can purchase as souvenirs of their brief encounters with artistic rebellion. The conversations you join follow predictable patterns that repeat with mechanical regularity. Despite everyone's pretense that each exchange represents spontaneous intellectual discovery, discussions about consciousness and creativity serve as elaborate codes for more practical negotiations about prices, quality, and availability of substances that have become more essential than food or shelter for maintaining participation in community that no longer offers genuine creative stimulation, but has become your only source of identity and social connection. Your contributions to these discussions reveal the cognitive deterioration that makes sustained intellectual engagement increasingly difficult, despite your desperate attempts to maintain appearances of philosophical sophistication. The insights that once earned respect among serious artists have been reduced to recycled fragments of half-remembered ideas, delivered with diminishing conviction by someone who no longer believes in the premises underlying her own arguments about art and authenticity. The social dynamics you navigate each evening are poisoned by desperation that transforms every interaction into potential exploitation, disguised as cultural collaboration. The same people who celebrate your artistic vision are simultaneously calculating how your deteriorating condition might be monetized through sales of work created during periods of obvious distress. Your suffering has become entertainment that generates profits for everyone, except the person actually experiencing the destruction. The economic mathematics governing these evening activities have achieved brutal simplicity that makes mockery of romantic notions about artistic community and mutual support. Each social interaction requires investment of time, energy, and chemical enhancement that exceeds any potential return from sales, commissions, or other opportunities that might emerge from networking within increasingly impoverished circles of desperate individuals competing for scarce resources. Your artistic reputation has completed its transformation from promising talent to tragic cautionary tale, though this change is disguised by euphemisms that allow the community to avoid confronting the systematic destruction it enables, while profiting from authentic stories of creative suffering. You're no longer described as technically skilled, but as emotionally honest. Your work isn't praised for compositional excellence, but for raw authenticity. Your obvious deterioration is reframed as spiritual deepening that produces art impossible to achieve through conventional training or stable mental health. The physical spaces where you spend these evenings have been contaminated by activities and associations that make genuine creative focus nearly impossible to achieve. Cafes that once stimulated intellectual exchange now function primarily as marketplaces for illegal transactions conducted with theatrical sophistication that disguises criminal commerce as cultural activity. Studios that should inspire artistic collaboration have become shooting galleries where creativity serves mainly as justification for chemical consumption that destroys the very capabilities it claims to enhance. Your interactions with potential buyers require performances that grow more challenging, as your ability to maintain convincing facades deteriorates under pressure of accumulated damage from months of systematic abuse disguised as artistic exploration. Collectors seeking authentic Bohemian experiences expect artists to embody romantic stereotypes about creative suffering, while remaining functional enough to produce work they can display as evidence of their cultural sophistication and adventurous taste in contemporary art. The international dimensions of your evening activities expose you to surveillance and potential prosecution that extend far beyond personal health risks associated with chemical dependency. The same gatherings that provide social connection and commercial opportunities also attract attention from authorities. Monitoring connections between artistic communities and political subversion that threatens established social order and economic stability. Your romantic relationships have devolved into transactions based on mutual access to resources, rather than genuine affection or artistic collaboration. The passionate affairs that once seemed to embody bohemian ideals of free love have been replaced by calculated arrangements where intimacy is exchanged for drugs, shelter, or access to potential buyers for increasingly unmarketable artwork that reflects your systematic deterioration more accurately than any deliberate artistic statement. The technical aspects of whatever artistic work you attempt during these evening sessions have been compromised by neurological damage that makes precise control of tools nearly impossible without chemical assistance that ultimately undermines the stability it temporarily provides. Your hands shake too violently for detailed work. Your color perception has been altered in ways that make accurate mixing impossible, and your attention span has been reduced to fragments that prevent completion of complex compositions requiring sustained concentration and consistent technique. The storage and preservation of whatever work you do manage to complete has become a constant source of anxiety as living situations grow increasingly unstable and temporary. Paintings representing weeks of effort remain vulnerable to damage, theft, or loss during frequent moves necessitated by inability to maintain stable housing arrangements. Your artistic output is being destroyed almost as quickly as you can create it, ensuring that even breakthrough works might not survive to establish lasting reputation or provide foundation for potential career recovery. Your correspondence with family and former friends has ceased entirely as the gap between your current reality and normal social expectations has become impossible to bridge through conventional communication. The energy required to maintain connections with people from your previous life has been consumed by immediate survival needs that leave no resources for activities not directly related to securing chemical supplies or generating minimal income through whatever means remain available. The seasonal rhythms that once provided natural structure for creative work have been replaced by artificial cycles determined by drug availability and withdrawal patterns rather than inspiration, energy levels, or artistic vision. Your most productive periods now correspond to times when substances are readily available and relatively pure, while creative paralysis coincides with shortages that leave you too physically compromised to work regardless of motivation or artistic ambition. The evening progresses with mechanical inevitability toward outcomes that offer no genuine hope for breakthrough or recovery, only temporary relief from awareness of how completely you've betrayed original artistic ambitions, while convincing yourself that systematic self-destruction represents authentic creative exploration rather than elaborate suicide performed for entertainment of audiences who profit from your degradation while maintaining safe distances from its actual consequences. Your artistic vision has become simultaneously more intense and more unreliable as chemical alterations to consciousness have progressed beyond the point where enhancement can be distinguished from impairment. The insights you achieve during periods of deep intoxication possess qualities that seem profound and revolutionary to your altered perception, but they prove increasingly difficult to translate into finished works that communicate effectively to audiences not sharing your chemically modified perspective on reality and creative expression. The financial resources that once provided modest security have been systematically converted into chemical supplies that produce diminishing returns while requiring ever-increasing investments to achieve effects that were once easily accessible through smaller quantities of higher quality substances. Your economic situation has reached mathematical breaking point, where continued participation in this lifestyle requires resources you no longer possess, while abandoning it would eliminate your only remaining source of identity and social connection. The mirror behind the bar reflects back someone who has learned to perform her own destruction with theatrical sophistication that transforms personal tragedy into commercial entertainment for audiences seeking vicarious experiences of artistic rebellion without accepting actual risks or consequences associated with genuine creative exploration. The woman staring back embodies contradictions that would have seemed impossible to your former self, representing everything you once hoped to become and everything you've actually achieved through systematic betrayal of original artistic ambitions. The beautiful nightmare of Montmartre continues around you with mechanical efficiency that processes dreams into commodities while maintaining mythologies about artistic authenticity that serve primarily commercial rather than cultural purposes. The community that seemed to offer sanctuary from conventional society operates according to economic principles more ruthlessly exploitative than anything found in the bourgeois world. You originally sought to escape through dedication to creative expression and chemical experimentation. The evening activities stretching ahead offer nothing resembling genuine artistic opportunity or creative fulfillment. Only another series of transactions designed to maintain your minimal functionality within systems that profit from human suffering while disguising exploitation as cultural advancement and revolutionary artistic expression. The romantic idealism that brought you to Paris has been systematically converted into fuel for enterprises that benefit everyone except the artists whose lives provide raw material for elaborate commercial ventures disguised as bohemian communities dedicated to authentic creative exploration and cultural rebellion against established social order. The night deepens around you like gathering storm clouds pregnant with inevitable destruction, and you prepare to participate once again in rituals of beautiful self-annihilation that masquerade as artistic authenticity while serving primarily to generate profits for sophisticated criminal enterprises that have learned to weaponize human creativity and transform individual tragedy into marketable commodities, consumed by audiences seeking entertainment that allows them to experience romantic notions about artistic suffering without confronting its brutal realities or accepting responsibility for systems that create and maintain such elaborate machinery of human destruction, disguised as cultural institutions devoted to supporting creative expression and artistic innovation. The weight of this accumulated realization settles into your consciousness with the finality of a closing curtain. You've become a living artifact of your own choices, a breathing testament to how completely idealism can be corrupted when it encounters systems designed to exploit rather than nurture human potential. The face staring back from darkened windows no longer belongs to someone pursuing artistic dreams, but to someone whose dreams have been systematically harvested and processed into currency for enterprises that profit from the destruction they enable. Your evening preparations have evolved beyond ritual into something resembling religious ceremony, each gesture imbued with desperate significance by someone who understands that maintaining appearances has become more essential than creating authentic work. The rouge you apply serves not to enhance natural beauty, but to simulate the flush of health on features that tell increasingly obvious stories of systematic deterioration. Your hands have developed the practiced efficiency of someone who has learned to work around limitations that grow more severe with each passing day. The artistic materials arranged before you mock the serious creative intentions they once represented. Paint tubes squeezed to extract every possible drop have been refilled with mixtures that bear little resemblance to the pure pigments you once took for granted. Brushes worn beyond their intended lifespan create marks that satisfy neither your artistic vision nor commercial requirements, forcing you to adapt techniques that compensate for tools no longer capable of producing the effects you need to achieve. Your canvas bears the archaeological evidence of multiple abandoned attempts, each false start marking another moment when physical limitations overwhelmed creative ambitions. The layered paint creates texture that might appear intentional to casual observers, but represents nothing more than the accumulated frustration of someone whose capabilities have been systematically destroyed by the same substances that promise to enhance them beyond conventional limitations. The mirror reflects back someone who has learned to read her own deterioration with clinical detachment, noting changes that mark progression through stages of decline that follow predictable patterns observed in countless other artists who preceded her down this path. The hollow cheeks that no amount of cosmetic skill can disguise speak of malnutrition rationalized as spiritual dedication. The tremor that affects even simple movements announces neurological damage that may prove irreversible regardless of any future attempts at recovery. Your selection of evening destinations involves calculations that would have horrified your former self. The ambitious young woman who believed artistic merit alone determined success in cultural communities. Now you must consider which establishments offer optimal combinations of potential buyers whose taste runs toward authentic suffering, dealers whose product might provide enough stability for basic functioning, and social dynamics that minimize risks of confrontations that could compromise your already precarious position within networks that represent your only remaining source of identity. The streets of Montmartre have been transformed from inspiring backdrop for artistic adventure into obstacle course requiring careful navigation by someone whose physical and mental stability can no longer be assumed. Every step demands concentration that leaves less energy available for the creative thinking that once flowed effortlessly through daily activities. The romantic atmosphere that attracts tourists seeking authentic Bohemian experience becomes sensory overload, threatening to trigger episodes that could derail carefully planned evening activities. Your arrival at chosen establishments announces itself through recognition rituals that operate with theatrical precision, despite their appearance of spontaneous social interaction. Fellow artists perform concern while calculating your remaining commercial value. Dealers disguise business assessments as cultural discourse about the relationship between suffering and authentic creative expression. Collectors examine you like specimens representing experiences they can purchase and display as evidence of their sophisticated appreciation for contemporary artistic movements. The conversations you participate in have become elaborate performances where everyone understands their roles but maintains pretenses about genuine intellectual engagement and artistic collaboration. Philosophical discussions about consciousness serve as coded negotiations for chemical transactions. Theoretical debates about creative authenticity disguise practical exchanges of information about sources, prices, and quality of substances that have become more essential than traditional artistic supplies for maintaining participation in communities that no longer offer genuine creative stimulation. Your contributions to these discussions reveal cognitive limitations that make sustained intellectual engagement increasingly difficult, despite desperate attempts to maintain facades of philosophical sophistication. Ideas that once flowed with natural eloquence now require conscious effort to articulate. Complex concepts that seemed obvious during your healthier periods have become elusive and fragmentary, accessible only during brief moments of artificial clarity that cannot be reliably reproduced or sustained without chemical assistance, that ultimately undermines the stability it temporarily provides. The social dynamics governing these evening interactions have been poisoned by desperation that transforms every relationship into potential exploitation disguised as artistic partnership. The same individuals who celebrate your dedication to authentic creative exploration simultaneously calculate how your deteriorating condition might be monetized through sales of work produced during periods of obvious distress that collectors value more highly than pieces created during stable periods of conventional mental health. Your artistic reputation has completed its evolution from promising talent to marketable tragedy. Though this transformation remains disguised by rhetoric that allows participants to avoid confronting the systematic destruction they enable, while profiting from stories of creative suffering that provide entertainment for audiences seeking vicarious experiences of artistic rebellion. You're described not as someone whose skills have deteriorated, but as someone whose work has achieved deeper authenticity through embrace of experiences that conventional artists lack courage to explore. The economic mathematics of your situation have achieved brutal clarity that eliminates any remaining illusions about community support